so you wouldn't have to share.
That's
So
funny.
I do remember I finally found the cost. It was like $300 for everything.
Wow. And
We didn't
who
have to pay
actually
the rent.
came? So Aunt Jackie came. Like who else came?
Aunt Jackie, Michael,
Michael
your
was the
Uncle
best
Michael was the
man.
best man.
My parents came.
And they came. One of the professors at Upper Bound escorted me because my father couldn't afford to come.
Macmillan.
Yeah, Ron McMillan. He's deceased now. Reverend Woods performed the
Wow.
ceremony, but would not do it at Shiloh Baptist because we weren't members. So he came to the Black House.
I mean, it was probably better that it was there anyway.
Yeah, but didn't have to pay for anything.
But yeah, Sunday afternoon after Thanksgiving.
And that was the time when most people could come, around the holiday. And my maid of honor, who I can't seem to get in contact with anymore, is actually the sister of Mae Jemison, the astronaut. My maid of honor is a psychiatrist. She's practicing in Houston, and for some reason, she never returns my emails. And I don't know why.
If you're watching, return her emails.
Yeah. Because I know where she is. I know where she is. But I was stunned to find out that her sister was the Black astronaut, Mae Jemison. I was like, wow. So there were some pretty famous people who came out of it.
You all are, not doing too bad.
No, but they were the surgeons and lawyers and professors and stuff.
And you're a lawyer.
Yeah, but not then. I was in insurance, paying claims.
You are now.
Well, that's another story. I didn't have a lot of confidence.
My point.
Some people really knew what they wanted to do before they graduated. I had no. That I didn't think I could get into law school, so I didn't even try.
And so that's one of the things about a dream deferred, because she woke up one day and said, I'm tired of doing banks. I'm tired of doing insurance companies and things. All this hard work, and this is never what I wanted to do. And I kind of looked at her and said, well, what is it you want to do? And she said, well, I always wanted to be a lawyer. And I said, well, why aren't you being a lawyer? And she said, I got 3 kids. What am I going to do with 3 kids and going to school? And I said, you let me worry about that. If you want to go to school, you get in and you go, and I'll take care of the kids.
That's what happened.
That was kind of the challenge.
Now we're skipping some stuff, but I was in middle school?
I think you were in 9th grade.
Or middle school going into high school? Okay, and I'm the oldest, so yeah, so they were young. So if I was
graduated the same year I graduated. In 74 you graduated from high school, 94.
And so
94.
I became the brownie dad, and the Boy Scout dad, and taking the kids around anything and everything.
Everything.
And Alfreda would disappear in the morning about 8 or 9 o'clock.
Most people didn't even know I was their mother because they never saw me.
But you were working full time and going to school part time.
Yeah.
Which is
going to
a
school
lot.
part time at night.
I would not recommend part time was just one fewer class than daytime full time.
Wow.
So they tried to kill us the first year. And our class ranged from age 25 to 65.
Wow. And you were how old at the time?
It was 1990. So what was that, 37?
Yeah, mid-30s.
Wow.
Yeah, that's when I started.
That was a real leap of faith to stop working and everything, and then to devote that kind of time. And she really got the business on the job. People were just downing her and
because they weren't
laughing at her because they didn't think she would be able to do it, and even if she did graduate, she would never pass the bar and things. So some of her co-workers were really pretty vicious.
The white ones.
Let's call it like it is.
Yeah.
But that was a huge inspiration for me, seeing that, even though obviously, when you're young, you don't know everything that goes into it. You can't possibly know But Dad told me I could do whatever I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So even when Dad tried to tell me, no, don't quit your job, don't go back to school, keep your job, so you have that foundation. I'm like, no, I'm going to go to school full time. I'm going to get this GA. I'm going to get a scholarship, and this is what I'm going to do. And I did exactly what I said I was going to do.
Well, we were brought up in that culture that once you get a good job, you don't quit. And because it was
until you get something better.
It wasn't that, but you didn't even look. The goal was to keep it until retirement. And then the culture changed a little bit, gradually. But my mother, was going to have, she was hysterical almost when I told her I was going to quit Cigna, where I was at the time, and she thought that was the best job ever, and it wasn't bad. And I told her I was going to go to the bank because I wanted to do human resources, and they wouldn't let me transfer at Cigna. I was in employee benefits. So she thought the world was going to collapse because I'm changing jobs.
Wow.
And in her culture, if you got a good job, you stay there until retirement.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so part of our parenting is what sometimes maybe weren't even conscious, that we would relapse and revert to what we knew or what we had been exposed to. And that's when you get that fear and insecurity, because it wasn't always that easy for us to get decent jobs or professional jobs. So,
well, you said there was only 2 places hiring, and you ended up working at Travelers.
Yep.
So
the first Black female reps in the country.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so how long did you do all of that before you decided to go to law school? How long were you in the workforce?
From 19, was it 19? Well, I started right after, so 1974 and had children all in between until I went to law school in 1990. I was working all the time. The only time I didn't work was after you were born. That was the only.
For a year, you said, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way we managed that was we lived on one income, and somebody told me, why don't you apply for unemployment? And I didn't think I would be eligible because I quit.
That's true.
You made me quit. I was a claim rep, and I was supposed to be out on the road 4 days or so every week. And I at the time you were on a waiting list, and I couldn't get you in daycare. And there was no teleworking back then.
Right.
I had a company car. I had to go to people's houses to settle their claims or dispute them if they weren't our insured. And there was no way you could do that with an infant. And they get another ultimatum. They gave me an ultimatum. You either come back to work in 6 weeks or quit. And at that point, I felt I had no choice, so I quit. And it was a very fearful, anxious time because I didn't think we could make it on one income.
Because you all were how old at that point? So you got married in, was 75?
No, we got married in
74.
So
73.
I was
Okay.
20. Well, I was 21 when I graduated.
Yeah. So y'all were young.
But we had gone to a banker after he graduated in 75. He had an offer. I was at Travelers. He got an offer. Then it was called Connecticut General, which is now Cigna. And I think I started out at $7,400 a year, and he got $8,600 a year. And we thought, we live in large here. So we went to we started looking for a house and went to a bank. I remember now it's on Park Avenue, but I can't remember the name of it. And the banker was the vice president at the time, sat us down and told us we couldn't afford to buy a house because at the time I had quit. So whatever we had was savings and Arthur.
So it was $8,600 that y'all were living on?
It was something maybe around 92 at that point. He got some, somewhat decent raises, but the banker said there's no way. So he told me I had to go back to work or forget about buying anything. But in the meantime, before that, we lived in a condo. And I think that's what got us thinking, if we can pay this much for rent, we can surely buy. But he had to educate us to say, you're not just paying the mortgage, You got to have money for taxes. You got to have for repairs and maintenance and yada, yada, yada. So that's when I went back to work. So I was home with you for a year. And after that, we couldn't afford it. We had to have 2 incomes.
Wow. And so, so from then on, the whole time you worked and went to school.
There was no family leave at that time. Pregnancy Disability Act wasn't passed until 1979.
Wow.
So you could get fired. Like years ago, if you talk to some older, like people probably in their 80s, they'll tell you when you were a teacher, when you started to show, you were sent home. I mean, it was just automatic. You couldn't work anymore. So there weren't any pregnancy, laws to protect you. And it just, like I said, you were born in 76. The Pregnancy Disability Act wasn't passed till 79. And that's when Aaron was born.
Aaron was born, yeah.
But there was no paid leave. It just protected you from getting fired. But there was no family leave. There was no paid leave. Fortunately, I worked then still at Cigna, and we had, I think, short-term disability. And I don't know if I don't think I got 26. No, I couldn't get 26 weeks because they only gave 6 weeks. That's what it was. 6 weeks for regular non-complicated pregnancy and 8 weeks if you had any complications.
C-section or something.
Or C-section.
Wow.
So after
interesting.
6 weeks plus I think 2 weeks of vacation or whatever, I had to come back to work. So I wasn't home with Aaron at all. And I think at that time,
when you got married and both of you got married, I mean, obviously really young. Dad's parents, my grandparents, were married many years. Your parents got a divorce.
They were very young when they got married too.
And they were very young, and your parents got a divorce. Like, how was marriage for you? Like, was it what you thought it was going to be? Did you even think you knew what it was going to be? Like, what was your experience?
Depends on when it was.
Well, especially in the beginning when it's new.
Well, in the beginning, it was teamwork, and to some extent, we still had that. But it was all, we had to rely on each other because that's all we had. Our parents didn't have any money to give us. There was no money like some people we knew would get money for down payment for a house. Everything we had to do on our own. So, from buying a car to paying rent to, to that point of trying to buy a house. When everybody was going to the suburbs, we wound up leaving Middletown, which was a suburb and very desirable at the time. And we wound up in Hartford because that's all we could afford. So it was a partnership in every respect at that time. I didn't compare. If I had thought like my mother probably did, I would have never got married because I knew about marriages that weren't happy and they were still together because economically that was the only way they could survive. I knew that it was very hurtful and damaging, and I guess some trauma, having my parents divorced when I was 5 and having her struggle as a single parent and being supported to the extent that they could support us. My maternal grandmother and her husband, which was actually my step grandfather, but I didn't know he was my step grandfather until many years later because he was the only grandfather I knew. So when they could support us, they did. But he was a construction worker. My grandmother had a stroke the first time when I was 5. So and they didn't have physical therapy like they have now. So her left side was paralyzed. And so she stopped working. And from that point on, she was a housewife. But she was disabled with, a limp and her left arm always in sort of a paralyzed condition. Fortunately, she was right-handed. But it's hard when you have, you don't have full use of one of your arms and hands. So it was a struggle. And if I had thought about it, what my mother and father had gone through, I probably would have never gotten married because they lasted only 10 years. And it was a bad experience for me when they got divorced. I was living like Cinderella, being an only child, had everything I wanted, needed, and then all of a sudden I had nothing. Everything disappeared. because they couldn't afford to live separately. So that meant whatever they had for me disappeared because they were both in survival mode.
So even part of that though, you said it was like a partnership. And so even having that experience, that sounds like that really helped to solidify that a partnership was needed, that you work better when it's two of you together as opposed to separate. Dad, what about you? Like, how was marriage for you in the beginning? I mean, coming from a family, right, where your parents, were married for many years, well, until they died. So how was marriage for you?
It really was and still is a sacred institution in my family. All of my brothers and sisters have been married. Of the 8 children, I believe that there were only 2 divorces.
One at the time.
One.
Well,
divorce.
one at that time,
Carson had a few.
but now,
Who else?
but at this point in time, there are 2 total.
Oh, you're right.
Not yet,
Yeah.
but will be.
Not yet, but okay, but one. And yes,
they
now recently.
They didn't believe in divorce.
Yeah.
No matter what.
And so part of it was that you needed to try to work things out. And I think one of the greatest things that Tyler Perry ever did was to talk about the 80-20 rule, to encourage couples to, sit down and write down what they like, what they don't like, and examine it. And if 80% of the things are things that you like, then you better hold on to that person and just try to cope with the 20%, because you're never going to find 100%. And I think that was sage advice, and I don't know that he gets enough credit for that, but I use that regularly when I'm involved with marriage counseling as clergy, and even just to volunteer to people that if you find 80%, that's a gem. And especially if you all have common goals. And we started out with nothing. I mean, that was one of the commonalities. So we didn't have to worry about somebody taking all the money and using it, because there was none to be taken. It was like, when we kept checkbooks and things of that nature,
everything was joint.
Everything was joint, but we had to keep a checkbook because there wasn't enough money, and you could very easily go over and balance the check. And sometimes the balance in that checkbook was $10, $12. It was that, and we tracked the pennies too. I mean, it wasn't just the dollars. We tracked the dollars and the pennies in the checkbook. And so we really have come a long way, but it has been on the basis of us both doing what worked for the good of the whole. And sometimes that meant that, one of you gets a new car and the other one has to wait.
Get the hand-me-down car.
And then
who got a new car? We all got hand-me-downs.
No, she got a new car.
No,
well,
Karen reminded us that and I forgot, we did buy him a Tercel.
A new one?
It was new?
I don't know if it was.
It was not.
It wasn't a hand-me-down.
Well, mine certainly was.
Handed from one to the other. It was his.
It may have been certified pre-owned, but it wasn't new.
And it was his favorite car. He didn't, because otherwise it would have been passed from you to him, then to Angela.
Yeah, because I got your car.
At one point,
I got the Chrysler LeBaron.
Oh yeah. Well, then
that wagon. We only had that.
No, not the wagon.
No, the LeBaron.
The Mercury.
No, the Chrysler LeBaron.
Yeah, we had that for.
I don't remember that one.
That was your car, and that's what I got when I was 16.
Oh.
Yep.
But then when did we get you the Escort?
That was later. That was after college. I was like,
oh, okay.
Yeah,
I was going to say about
I was working.
Two was, well, we bought it. One of the things I was going to say about the marriage is by living so far away And his mother gave us that sage advice. Don't come home running to me and telling me about what the other one has done. Work it out. And since we were in Connecticut and they were in Georgia, I never told, if there was any differences or arguments, I didn't tell Mama because I knew she didn't want to hear it. And I think she told all of us that, when we got married. I'm not going to be partial. I'm not going to get involved. Don't come here telling me tales about each other. Work it out.
And we saw that in her lifestyle too, where her life wasn't all glamorous and everything. She had to put up with some things that, we didn't like, but we saw her.
I didn't find out about until much later.
Thank goodness.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But when we found out, we could see that she had been sticking it out for the good of the family. And so some of what we have had to do individually and collectively has been for the good of the family. And that's still very important.
And I think that's wise advice, because that's one of the things that happens is there's a fight or argument, something, and you go telling your friend, your family, and then you make up, and then they're still upset with them because of what you told them. And they're like, what's wrong with you? Why are you still with them? And you're over it. You moved on and they haven't. So,
and the other thing
I definitely understand that.
Because we were so young, I don't know if it was conscious or unconscious, we were determined to make it because especially his sisters didn't think marriage at his age was the right thing to do. And they were not.
How old were you, Dad?
Nice.
We were both 20.
Yeah.
But they had great expectations.
Yeah.
I mean, we grew up out of a society, and actually there's a Facebook group now for Rosalie Holly Wright Elementary School in Atlanta.
Okay.
And there were a lot of working class people there who had very high expectations. And so their children became doctors and lawyers. One of the neighbors was an elected representative, and he had 2 daughters, and neither was in my class, but I knew the family and I knew all of them. And so we could see what upward mobility could do. And a lot of that was based on getting a good education. And I am one of 8 children. And my parents were determined for all of us to have an opportunity to get a good education.
Yeah. And how did they manage that when they didn't even get to high school?
Only the grace of God. But all 8 of us had the opportunity to go to college.
But you're the only male.
I have 4 sisters. All of my sisters not only graduated from college, but all of them have advanced degrees of some type. Of the boys, I think only 2 of us ended up with college diplomas. And so Michael went back and got his.
He did?
Georgia State.
Oh, he did. Okay.
But that was later on.
He went in the service.
He got a diploma. So
I didn't remember that.
And then you went on and got your master's as well.
Because I was valedictorian of my class, so there were very, very high expectations that you're going to do something great. And
so you think they thought I was going to stop you from going to school?
Stop me from becoming something great as they had expected.
So maybe a distraction, they thought, possibly.
I don't know. They were keen on the idea.
I don't think they understood how much pressure.
They let me know they weren't keen on the idea.
I don't think they understood how much pressure there was in this idea of becoming. And we hear a lot about that with the Asian families and what they're doing with their children, where they're, getting them involved in all these activities, and their resumes got to be pristine, and they got to do this, that, and the other. That is a tremendous
and they have a high rate of suicide.
Pressure. And that's kind of suicide or mental disorders and skin disorders. That was my situation. And so, and the
fact that you all were there by yourselves, creating this life with no support.
Right. And so I would not have been on my own what I am as part of a couple. And I would dare say she would not be what she is were it not for the couple, because I don't think she ever would have left her kids to venture out to try to do what she wanted to do unless I had said to her, do it and I'll take care of everything else.
Yeah.
But the key was I kept my end of the bargain.
You did. You absolutely
I mean, it's not that it was perfect, but sometimes instead of cooking, we went.
It was a lot of takeout.
We went to Connecticut General Life Insurance Company, and we had that $1.25 special meal. That
we definitely did. I remember Chinese. We would do the lunch specials and not order at night. Yeah.
And
still do.
And we would do friendlies where you would pay for your
friendlies,
and you would get the sundae that had the cone on top of
the
ice cream scoop, and so we